Welcome back to the Global Business Report here on Arise News. The real estate sector was front and center in Abuja at a estate surveyors forum that was attended by Senate Leader Godswill Akpabio, as well as Governor Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State, and Wale Edun, who of course is the Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy. Now, they discussed a whole number of things. Well, one, Lagos State says that it wants to get, at least Governor Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State, he wants to get Lagos State contribution to GDP, real estate's contribution to Lagos GDP to 15 to 20% from between 5 to 6%. Godswill Akpabio, for his part, says that there are some quacks in the real estate sector that need to be kicked out. Now, we do need to replay that real estate clip that we did in the first segment that featured Jerome Powell, where Jerome Powell was talking about the importance, or rather the impact of interest rates on the housing sector. And then we're going to get our guest that's with us to talk about fiscal policy and how that can improve housing in Nigeria.
A lot of attention, and I would agree with you. We have significant housing issues in the country, and we had them before the pandemic. Certainly the pandemic has created new distortions, and you know, monetary policy works through interest-sensitive spending. There is no more interest-sensitive spending than, you know, buying a house and having a mortgage. So, for sure, our tighter policy is having an effect on economic activity in the housing sector. But I would also say the best thing we can do for housing is to succeed in getting inflation down to 2% on a sustainable basis, so that rates can come down, so that the housing market can get back to what was the pre-pandemic normal, which is to say still a housing shortage, but not dealing with the kinds of specific things we're dealing with now.
All right, Ayo Ibaru, who is the CEO of North Court Real Estate, he joins us now to discuss. Ayo, good morning to you. Good to see you again. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here.
Fantastic. Ayo, why don't we have incentives on the fiscal side to boost housing supply?
I mean, it's always interesting when I see clips of advanced nations and what they're doing.
And we compare them here?
No, it does show that we have a standard that we're trying to get to, but then it does mean we have to control for certain things. Now, that economy is arguably the largest, in the world, and they have certain regulations that keep them efficient, and that's why you find him having to explain how the economy is performing. Now, incentives are expensive and they require political will. Now, on the supply side, it does mean that for developers and those in the construction space who supply housing and various real estate products, you do have to give tax rebates, you have to give subsidies, you have to ensure that you are fully behind every project as long as it is aligned with the national plan around housing, which we do need as a country. And by that, I mean, at the end of the day, we should be clocking in Lagos at least 10,000 houses supplied a year for us to even start the conversation, because it's possible. And at the end of the day, that's what we need on the supply side. Now, on the demand side, you do need to assist with down payments. You have to ensure that the interest rates on loans for individuals trying to get houses from the government are much lower than what you would get, in the standard market. For example, I think it was Lagos Homes that did something a couple of years ago under the Fashola administration, I believe, and he did do a good job of keeping the interest rates under 10%. Of course, that project didn't progress when he left office, and those are the kind of things that you have to look at. Incentives do cost a bit, but then housing is always worth the investment because of the multiplier effects it has on the economy.
Why don't we have a liquid housing market? Why that I guess allows for these down payments that kind of give you, extended time to pay them back?
I mean, when you talk about liquidity, it does, by definition, mean the ease and the frequency at which houses or real estate assets change hands. And in a country like Nigeria, where the economy isn't predictable, it's difficult to extend funding, which will make housing purchasing liquid for an extended period of time, because, job losses are a regular occurrence. Currency devaluations are something that happens quite frequently. And again, the regulations around housing development, land administration are still difficult. And I think I'll wait for us to get to the Senate President's comments, and then I'll maybe speak more on that.
Okay, now we've got, real GDP growth for real estate,
Yes.
and then we've also got its contribution
Yes.
to GDP. And you did bring those numbers to us on every occasion where North Court Real Estate releases its very comprehensive West African. Okay, we'll put them up. But as far as GDP growth, I mean, Ayo is doing less than, there it is. So, I mean, this is less than 2%, right? So from first quarter 2023 all the way through to first quarter of 2024.
Yes.
Contribution, I guess, about 5-6% is what it's been doing. What needs to be done to improve these figures?
Our real estate markets are largely inefficient.
Yeah.
And by inefficient, I mean it takes too much effort to get too little done. And by that, to attempt to simplify, it does mean that if you want to develop a project, as far as the World Bank is concerned, just completing your title documentation and ensuring that those documents are processed is about 92 days on average in Nigeria. Now, I'm sure it's slightly longer, but compared to Rwanda is just 8 days.
Wow.
And at the end of the day, when you have projects taking too long to even see the light of day, it just complicates things.
Okay, so then let's now get to the Estate Surveyors Forum that took place a couple of days. I guess we can start with Lagos.
Yes.
The governor, Sanwo-Olu, is looking to get contribution to GDP for Lagos from between 5 to 6% to 15 to 20. He said everybody, it's a collaborative effort. Everybody has to be involved. Break that down. What has to happen for Lagos to?
I mean, first of all, as a government or as a people, we have to realize that we don't have as much time as we think we do.
Yeah.
And that's because there's a gestation period from planning to final execution of projects. And so what this means is the work that is ongoing on infrastructure has to be accelerated because in many ways, infrastructure development is kind of a shortcut in that it helps force investment into other areas. A good example here will be the Lekki-Ekpe expressway that is ongoing. I think it's Cranberg behind it. What you will find is as that road has made progress, the land values and the property values along both sides of that road have increased. But then there's a much bigger problem. It's the Land Use Act 1978. Honestly, if the Senate President really wants to help us, I think it's something that they need to look at because it's arguably the one stumbling block that needs to be dealt with. And what does that do? Of course, it puts all power, control of land and property in the hands of the state governor. And then, of course, he can use that for overwhelming public good. But the problem is it has led to bureaucracy over the years and it's rather inefficient. So it slows things down. You can't get funding in time. You can't plan properly. And now again, if you look at Lagos, since that was what you mentioned, we also have the Lagos Land Law of 1993. And then we also have a document passed by the Assembly that pretty much puts all property in the hands of the Lagos State from Ikoyi to Ekpe, 200 kilometers left and right in their hands. And so it's not that you can't get stuff done. You can develop real estate assets, but then there's always that question, what will happen to the property? And, I think what I'm thankful for is you didn't start with the recent demolitions because that would have been, and then, of course, the landmark issue, that would have just brought in, fly in the ointment, so to speak. And so people look at these things and then they make decisions. So infrastructure is one way to go. The second thing is there's a Lagos building, I think it's the Investment Committee. I can't remember the full name, but it's the LBIC. And what they do is they found really unique ways of creating models whereby the average person can get loans through them and can buy their own house. And they've been really successful. They've changed their management. And I think it's a model that different states can adopt, which is a system of aggregating funding and then tailoring the distribution of that funding to the unique needs of the individuals.
Okay, so now let's get to the Senate President Godswill Akpabio. Yes. He said, at that same Estate Surveyors Forum that there are a lot of quacks in there, and that they need to be gotten rid of. So, but then, again, if I won't play the clip, but Jerome Powell had a question thrown at him from a legislature, and he threw it right back and said, look, this is for you to take care of. So, isn't the legislature...
Every time I come here, you always set me up. Are you asking me to tell the Senate President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that this is for him to set up?
Right.
They're watching us now on national TV. Look.
Help us.
So this is what has to happen.
Yeah.
And that is seriously speaking.
Yeah.
The conversation around the Land Use Act 1978 has to be had.
Yeah.
Something has to be done about it. It's just a stumbling block. It's really of no use, if you think about it, to the speed of growth that we need. That's one. But then the Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers, of course, of which I am a member, I've been a member for years.
Great.
We do have a investigations panel. We do have a disciplinary committee. But we can only address those who are part of us. Now, the thing with quacks is people only complain about them when things go south. And the second problem is there's no one to escalate to. There's no one to call them to order. Now, I have been part of different cases where members of our institution went against the law, right? And we called them to task and we said, look, you need to resolve this issue, you need to refund and so on. I mean, in Singapore, if you try and you are found guilty to execute transactions outside of their framework, you're paying between $50,000 and $75,000.
Wow.
In fact, they have fines. They have prison time in US, Miami, Florida, Oregon, in in the UK, and in the Netherlands. If you consummate transactions outside of the legal framework, you are not licensed, you can spend time in prison. And that's what we have to do here. So the first thing is ensuring that everyone who is closing transactions is a registered surveyor. You have to be. It's the only way we can, talk about what's going on with members. I mean, in Lagos now we have about 2,280, 300 thereabout. Wow. But in terms of quacks not to be on their side, but one reason why people use them, and they won't say this, is because they tend to be very quick. But when you're a professional, you can't be quick in all things. When it gets to titling and documentation, you have to be deliberate. You have to take your time. And that's what they don't do. And to make a quick buck, they cut quite a number of corners. And sometimes they make it through, but then many people have gotten their fingers burnt, and then it's not a question of estate surveyors. No. If it's a registered estate surveyor and valuer, then that's fine. Okay, he can be reported, she can be reported, escalated, and the license can be seized, and so on and so forth.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. I've asked you, I keep asking you this question every time you come on.
Yeah.
How do we develop markets outside of Lagos and Abuja as far as competitive real estate markets in Nigeria?
One of the studies I did look at, I think it was from the MIT, did conclude, and it's an old conclusion, but it was reconcluded among us researchers. That's how we speak. Now, wherever economies grow, real estate markets follow. Right? Once the economy is weak, the real estate market won't be as strong. And that's why you see a lot of work or activity in Lagos and in Abuja. And until recently in Port Harcourt, because you now have insecurity and instability in the system, and that might take like 6 to 8 months to peter out before you start to see new investment. So state governors have to, in a sense, specialize on areas that can accelerate growth in their economy. So for example, do you want to focus on healthcare? And it's going to be a difficult move politically, but it will pay off long term, because it does mean that some things by the side will fail. So what state will pick healthcare as the healthcare capital of Nigeria, meaning all ailments, all surgeries, and so on and so forth are taken and are done there? Because you see, even in the West now, you're hearing long wait times. You were talking about Mélenchon and the French election. Yes, one of the things in Burgundy is south of Paris, dental appointments are 6 months.
Wow.
Yes, and surgeries in the UK, in Canada, they take forever and a day to get an appointment, and you must almost be at the point of death, right? But we saw a reversal of that in our study of the last 6 months, where you find people who are unable to meet GPs, right, in the West, come back to Nigeria to, of course, people who are competent and so on and so forth. So state governments can focus on healthcare, can also focus on education. And that builds, take, for example, Boston. Boston in the US is really education, right? That's where you have quite a number of institutions, right, that run the educational framework, right, in the United States. So ultimately, state governors have to look into their economies and force growth. It might be by partnerships. And they're doing this to a small extent, to a lesser extent they are. But like I said at the top of this, we assume we have time and we don't. We have to move faster. We have to sign more partnerships. We have to do more groundbreakings, and we have to do a bit more follow-up in terms of how quickly our projects see the light of day. So state governors have to work on improving their economies, and that will naturally bring real estate development. Yeah.
Ayo Ibaru, CEO of North Court Real Estate, always a pleasure. And I hope when your next report is out, you come and share with us.
I will.
Fantastic. You guys make the best reports. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.